Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Duke Football Coverage Podcast, brought to you as always by Bull City Coordinators. You can follow us on Twitter at DukeFB Coverage. You can go to our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. You can catch this podcast anywhere that you like to listen. We are on Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor, you name it, odds are we are probably there. And since the fans are going to be allowed to come back into the stadium this year, it's a good time to go to bullcitycoordinators.com, click on our merchandise link, and, get a couple of shirts, maybe a hat, something. Just represent the brand when you're at Wallace Wade this year, and hopefully we'll all be able to get there for at least one game this season. Now, as promised, enough of me prattling on. We have another interview today with a former Duke player who was a pretty good running back and a very good kicking teams player for us from 2013 to 2016, I believe. Wore, if my memory serves me correctly, and I haven't forgotten the research that I did, number 23. Hope I have not given it away yet, but would you go ahead and introduce yourself, please, sir?
Hey, guys. My name is Joe Ajeigbe. Right here in Southern California. Glad to be with you guys today.
Well, thank you for coming on, Joe. I look forward to speaking with you. And one of the things that I like to do now when we start off the interviews is give people a chance to talk about what they're doing now and what they've been up to since they left Durham. So if you would, just tell us what you're up to these days.
These days, I'm in law school studying to be an attorney. I'm going into my third year of law school. It was really after football was over that I was kind of looking for what's next. What would be that next journey? I've always been interested in the law. I had political aspirations, but I think we can all agree that the state of our political system right now is pretty crazy. So I don't know if that's something that I want to get into, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to be on this new journey after athletics.
Well, the third year, as I remember, was pretty challenging for a lot of people because you put so much into year one, year two, and you're seeing the finishing line approaching, and a lot of people will take their foot off the gas. So, like we were talking about before we get started, just keep your nose to the grindstone and push away, and don't give in to the over the hump temptation now that you're more than halfway through, and I think you'll be fine.
Exactly. And I think, as we were kind of talking about before, I think everybody kind of falls into that lull when as you said, you're more than halfway done. But I think now it's getting more real. The things that you're doing in law school are becoming more practical. It's a little less, I guess, theoretical theories of law. Now you're figuring out more like courtroom procedure, and I'm on the trial advocacy team, so you're really learning your courtroom etiquette, your courtroom presentation skills, and really your oral advocacy skills, things that you'll be using when if you become a trial attorney when you're in court. So I think this is challenging in a different way.
Well, the communication is an art. You're going into the legal field, and you understand that our words are our trade, right? So
absolutely,
how well you can get a point across is very important, and how well you convey your message is very important. And learning that skill early is very helpful. And it's a lot like, when you're playing any sport, you practice, you try to get better, you try to learn however you can. One thing that helped me tremendously, and it sounds like you're getting some of this now with the trial ad team, was I worked in a death penalty clinic at W&L Law School, and now they've transitioned to something else because Virginia's now outlawed the death penalty. But I got to interact with a lot of different practitioners, get more familiar with different areas of the law, and work with a guy who was a famous death penalty litigator. He worked on some big cases over the years, including the Susan Smith case from back home in South Carolina. And, the more you're in a situation like that and you can just act like a sponge and pick up those tricks of the trade, the more helpful it's going to be hitting the ground running when you graduate law school and start your legal career.
Exactly. And then this summer, actually, I'm actually working at the district attorney's office out here, in one of these cities in Southern California. And, really what I wanted to do going into this office is, one, get a practical feel for whether or not I could be a prosecutor, because I think, today, especially the way that, society's moving, I think that the way that people look at the criminal justice system is a little bit different. So I really wanted to go in and get a feel for the other side of this debate, and I really think so far it's been an eye-opening experience, definitely, to see, this side of things. I'm going to be able to go into court and, argue some motions and do preliminary hearings and stuff like that. So I think this will be a really good summer to kind of let me know what I want to do in the future with this law degree.
Well, it's a challenging job working in the criminal justice field, regardless of what side of the V you're on. But take as many opportunities as you can to get in court, and take whatever opportunities you can to try to figure out what you want to do and get some experience from it. Worst comes to worst, you may decide, well, I don't want to do that, but you'll meet somebody or interact with some folks who steer you in a different direction, and it'll work out real well for you. What do you have plans for after you graduate, as far as where you're going to be working? Have you got that locked down yet, or is that still in flux?
I mean, I'm definitely like with everything, I'm always open to different opportunities that come down the pike. But I definitely want to take the California bar, and I'm pretty much open to working anywhere in the state. I would love to be in Southern California, but I'm very open to kind of bouncing around.
Now, I was looking at some of your recruiting information in the GoDuke.com site. It looked like you were from from California originally. Is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised.
All right. What part did you grow up in?
So I grew up in a city called Riverside. It's for anybody who doesn't know where Riverside is, it's maybe about an hour. We say about an hour outside of LA. But with the way the traffic is out here, it could be anywhere from 2 to 2 hours and a half from LA. But yeah, so it's a pretty good sized city. I'd say it's a little more suburban than your downtown LA, but it's definitely a city that's hustling, bustling in its own right.
Well, what got you into football? What made you start playing football?
Well, I always loved sports. My parents started all of us out in soccer, and just something to kind of preserve our bodies. But my oldest brother, who's a few years older than me, he fought the good fight for us. He lobbied my parents to let us play football. And for him, it took a while for them to give in. I think they finally gave in when he was maybe like in 7th, 8th grade. But I mean, once they gave in with the oldest one, then there's no real grounds that they could say no to me. So I really just wanted to emulate my older brothers. I saw them playing football. We'd go to their games. I remember watching Friday Night Lights and just being like, yeah, that's gonna be me one day. And after the game, putting on their helmet and running around the field, like messing around with other kids. I was just like, really found my passion for the game, a true love for it. Watching Michael Vick and different people on Sundays, I was like, yeah, I want that to be me one day.
So tell us how you ended up coming to Duke.
So I started getting recruited by schools the summer of my junior year of high school, like the beginning of my junior year, actually that summer going into my junior year. And Duke was honestly never even on my radar. I remember the first offer that I got, like it was yesterday. And it's kind of, if I could take it back a little bit, it's kind of like we're working, especially a few years back when kids weren't getting offers so young and kids weren't getting recruited so early. It's kind of like you're working and you're putting good things on tape. You're giving it your all. You're doing stuff outside of the team strength and conditioning, and you're really just waiting for that first offer. And when you get that first offer, it's like a weight off your shoulder. So I got my first offer. It was from the University of Arizona, a Pac-12 school. And so, that's kind of like a weight off my shoulders. And I tell everybody, it's kind of like the recruiting process is in grade school when one girl likes you, like, you're not popular. When one girl likes you, it's kind of like everybody's like, hey, what's this guy about? So within a few days, I started getting other offers from, Boise State, Northwestern came. And so a lot of offers are coming in, and now I'm starting to evaluate where I could play college football. In my head at the time, I really wanted to stay in Southern California. We have USC, UCLA down here. And I really wanted to be at UCLA. That was my dream school. So in my head, if I ever got a UCLA offer, that's where I was going to go, hands down. So anyways, we go through summer conditioning and, we start the season. And, I'm having a pretty good year, and UCLA is showing a lot of interest in me. They're, inviting me out to games. I go to their junior day. I'm building a rapport with the running back coach. And this is under the tenure of Rick Neuheisel, if anybody knows who that is. And so UCLA comes to offer me and make an offer, and I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And after the season, Neuheisel and his staff, UCLA wasn't too good at the time. Neuheisel and his staff got fired. And the new staff that was coming in was Jim Mora. I believe he was coming from the Falcons. He was an assistant with the Falcons, so he was coming out to UCLA. And he made it clear to me, he was like, I'll honor the scholarship that you've been promised, but we have our own recruits at the position, so it's gonna be a battle for you to crack the lineup. And I've never shied away from any real competition, but it just didn't really seem like the most welcoming environment. And at this time, almost simultaneously, Duke comes into the fold because Corbin McCarthy. I'm not sure if anybody's too familiar with him, but he was one of my teammates at Duke. But he was also my high school teammate over here in Southern California. So he started getting recruited by Duke. He committed, decided to go there, and we're moving into my senior year now. Corbin's playing at Duke, and Duke is, they're recruiting me hard because now there's a connection between Southern California and Duke, and they're recruiting me hard. And I always say that Coach Cutt is kind of the person who can sell blue paint to the White House. He was a fabulous recruiter, and not so much as a coach, but more as a person. He gets to know you on a personal level. Got to know my family, and moving from Southern California to North Carolina is really a big leap, especially when I didn't have any family out there. But just throughout the whole recruiting process, he felt very, very genuine. So I would say that's how Duke kind of came on my radar. And I wanted to be a doctor, and that would have been a great opportunity to study medicine and play football at one of the top schools in the nation. So yeah, that's really how Duke came on my radar. Long-winded answer, but
no, that was great to hear. And coaching changes oftentimes produce a lot of benefits for programs. I think that's how Sean Renfree ended up at Duke when Georgia Tech lost, I think, Chan Gailey. And so it's interesting to hear about how you could have been playing for UCLA some had it not been for a coaching change. So, of course, we're glad that happened and you were able to come play with us. Did I get the years right? You were there 2013 to 2016?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in May 2013, and then I was on campus at Duke the end of June 2013. and I played from 2013. I redshirted my 2013. Played what would that be? I played 2014 to 2015, to 2015 to 2016. Yeah, so I left in 2016.
Now, if I remember correctly, I was at Wallace Wade on a very hot day watching you guys play Tulane. And I think that you picked off some sort of a pass. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. That was, I believe that was my first touchdown. Yeah, that was my first college touchdown. So it was, we were beating up on Tulane pretty good, I believe, at the time. But, they were still fighting back. I think they were within 17 or something. So it wasn't too bad of a game. And they were going to punt the ball. And at Duke, they put a huge emphasis on the kicking game, and everybody, even people who were actually playing, people who were really in the mix of things were on special teams, because special teams is how you win football games. Everybody's going to have an offensive scheme. Everybody's going to have a defensive scheme. But the teams that lapse in the kicking game are teams that can't win crunch football games. So we really put a huge emphasis on being great in all three phases. And so anyways, we didn't have a kick block on or anything. We were just, normal punt return. I think it was punt return right or something like that. Just normal punt return, and the snap, it was a bad snap. And so I'm just kind of watching, I'm waiting for my man to release and cover downfield so I could block him. And I see the snap, and it's a bad snap, and the puncher's trying to make something out of nothing, and he turns into quarterback. And so I turn into, I guess, Breon Borders, and I'm in coverage now, and he launches a pass up, and I pick it off, and my guys rallied around me, got everybody away from me, and we were able to put it in the end zone.
Well, tell us a little bit about being on the special teams. I always call them kicking teams in my head, but tell us a little bit about what the practice was like and how you guys prepared week in and week out.
So, just like every other phase, we have offense, we have defense. So we also had our third phase, which is special teams, and so we would have our scout team, and like I said, the coach cut really, I don't know if it's like this at other schools around the nation. We'll probably talk about this later, but when I left Duke, I played at another university, but I've never seen anybody really put an emphasis on the kicking game. From kickoff, we would call it the attack team, to kickoff return, to punt, to punt block. So we had a real emphasis on all three phases. And so we would get, just like we would get our scouting report for defense, being that I was on offense, and then defense would get their scouting report for the opposing offense. But we also would get a scouting report for special teams. We would see what formations they have, what they can do out of these formations, down and distance. Is it fourth down and short? Is it fourth down and long? Things that they're liable to do in fourth down and short. Whether if it was on the kickoff return team, we would see who's in the game. Sometimes different teams would put a certain player in the game if they wanted to do an onside kick, or if they had a return left, they were going to kick it to the left side of the field. They had their kickoff team shifted a certain way. So just being able to read different things, know what we have on. And then also we had to understand our game plan, our scheme. We had a lot of different things that we did in the kicking game that weren't really so dependent on what the opposing side did. So I think we really, really put a big emphasis on the kicking game. And like Wednesday's practice was pretty much like our special teams day, where we did a lot more special teams at the beginning of practice. And then, of course, Thursday walkthrough we did. Our Friday walkthrough we did a lot of special teams as well.
So You as a player, you're on the sidelines and you're kind of waiting to see if you're going to go on. Tell us a little bit about how you guys in the kicking unit would stay sharp, stay focused, and be ready.
Yeah, especially when our defensive guys are on the field, it's getting to be, second down, okay, and third down comes along, and it's like, all right, usually the special teams coach or the special teams graduate assistant would come around, grab guys, if you're in the offensive huddle, hey, punt return's coming up soon. Got different guys are moving around. We had this thing called a launch pad. It was basically like a square with numbers on it, 10 people plus the returner or plus the kicker, whoever, the real specialist on that unit was. So everybody gets to that launch pad. If you're on defense, if you're a defensive sub, waiting to sub in, but you're also on a special team, all right, no, you come to the launch pad. If you're a running back who might be going in right now, you got to get to the launch pad and make sure we have 10 in the huddle before we go on the field. So that was always, like I said, like they were really, really buttoned up and professional about how we attack the kicking game. So everybody, especially attack, so that's kickoff, our kickoff team. We felt that if we put our defense in a great position, field position wise, that the percentages are more likely that we're going to get a turnover or we're going to get a 3-and-out. We're going to get some sort of stop. So attack was probably, I would say, our most important special team. And most people think of kickoff as whatever, just get the ball down the field. Don't let them get a crazy return. Don't let them put any points on the board. You're good. But for us, like kickoff, that was where it was at,
So let's talk about, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. I want to hear a little bit more about, you mentioned the other school that you played for. So let's just go ahead into that. At the end of the 2016 season into 2017, you decided to transfer and you go to Sacramento State. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So my whole thing in that was I felt that I wasn't really getting the exposure that I wanted at Duke, and I mean it's nothing really against the program. It's nothing against the staff. The running back room was a really talented room. We were all talented in our own right. We all got along in that room. I still talk to Sean and Shaq and Jawan even to this day. But it wasn't, a lot of us felt like we weren't really getting the amount of carries that we wanted, and we weren't really getting the exposure that we wanted at the position. Our offense was a dynamic offense, run the RPO style, so a lot of the emphasis was on the quarterback, and the running back in that offense kind of, is for better or worse, a role player. And there's nothing wrong with being a role player, but then we have 4 people in that room competing for the carries that are limited as it is. It just wasn't the best situation. And I think you figure out pretty early on that this is a business. It's a business for them, and it's a business for you as well. And as a business owner, you have to protect your interests, So that's kind of how that decision came to fruition.
Well, what was the transfer process like? And part of what I'd like to talk with you about now for a little bit is you see the way that kind of everybody's allowed to transfer now, and you get one, you can kind of leave without being penalized like you used to be able to. I'm curious, what was the process like for you? How did the coaches handle it? And what do you think about the transfer process as it is currently laid out?
So the transfer process at the time, I'll kind of talk about first how my interaction with the coaches were when I kind of knew that I was going to enter the portal. The year prior, I had a discussion with both Coach Boyette, who was with running backs at the time, and Coach Cut. I just wasn't really happy with my playing time, and I'm the type of person who is going to look in the mirror first before I look outside to blame other people or hold other people accountable. So I wanted to do everything that I could to put myself in the best position to be on the field. I did everything that I could, and, you know, I still felt like I wasn't satisfied with my playing time. So I just went to Coach Boyd and was straight up with him and told him how I was feeling. He told me, you know, basically what I already knew, that, you know, there's a lot of talent vying for the football, whether it be in the receiver room, it be at the quarterback position. We've had some good tight ends coming in and out of Duke, and of course we have 4 running backs who are trying to all compete for the same football. So I had a conversation with him. You know, he made me feel a little bit better about my status going forward. I spoke with Coach Cut, kind of let him know what was going on, and at this point, I was leaning more towards transferring. But again, as I said, Coach Cut is a great salesman. He's very personable, and he just let me know, you know, that staying at Duke was in my best interest, both academically as well as I can help the program out with things that I do other than running the football. But he also told me that, you know, I would be more in the mix of things. So I decided to stay. I stayed that next year, and this is when it's kind of like me and Sean are like the 1 and 2 in the room, you know, because I believe Jaleh got hurt. So it was that year. It was me, Sean, and Jaleh in the running back room. Jaleh got hurt, so really it was me and Sean, and even then I still wasn't too happy with the amount of carries that I was getting. So I decided after that I was going to transfer. The way that the transfer process went at the time was you can transfer after you graduate to any other school, any FBS school or any FCS school, as long as it's not in your same conference. If it was in your same conference, the head coach would have to sign off on it. So at this point, I had already graduated. So really my options were I could go pretty much anywhere. So I let Coach Cut know that, you know, I wouldn't be coming back for my 5th year. He tried to convince me, but at this point it was more like, you know, I'm doing this for me. At this point, I kind of want to get back closer to home. And then so after you get your coach's approval, I mean, different people do it different ways. Some people will just go to the athletic compliance first without their coach knowing, and they'll speak with athletic compliance and let them know that they want to transfer. And so how you have to do it is you have to get approval by your athletic compliance department. You basically give them a list, and they send out that list to schools that you've identified, like as potential places that you want to be. They'll send out an intent to transfer, basically letting them know that you want to enter the transfer portal. But this kind of gives a buffer zone. So while you're still on a team, other teams aren't contacting you. So they'll contact the athletic compliance department first, and then that request is filtered through them to you. And then they give you a release, and then once you get that release, you're allowed to talk to other schools. So for me, the way that I went about it was talking to Coach Cut first. You know, we had a mutual understanding what my plans were. I went to the athletic compliance department, identified some potential schools that I would like to talk to. They sent out my information, and then a lot of schools started contacting me. The schools that I really identified as places I would want to be were all on the West Coast. I was looking at different, from like the Mountain West Conference to Pac-12 schools. And then I spoke with somebody, and they told me, you know, if you go play FCS, you'll get good exposure playing against good competition, but also you can be a lot closer to home, et cetera, et cetera. So really identified a few schools in the FCS that I might want to play at. At first, I was a little hesitant to drop down a level, you know, just because when you're playing FBS football, you know, you think that's the gold standard. But the coaches at Sac State, you know, they really reached out to me and let me know that I could help their program, and Kind of just fell in love with them, fell in love with the staff, and went ahead and made that decision. You asked about the state of transfers today. I think that it 100% is a better system. As I stated earlier, you learn as a player that this is really a business. You see the business side of it. You see coaching changes, not so much at Duke when I was there. You didn't really see the coaching changes, but other people, like the story that I told about Neuheisel, when I'm committed there, that's where I want to go. But these guys are gone in an instant. And it always seems like, although this is supposed to be about the players, college football is really supposed to be about the student athletes. It ends up being about the coaches, about the administrators. And I think the way that we're going is college players, college athletes are really finally starting to get their voice. They're starting to get more say in their futures. And I definitely think that it's going in the right direction.
It's interesting what you say about it being more about the coaches and not the players. I like to think of it, it's more about the institutions and who has control over those institutions and how you want to maintain that. I mean, when I was young and a young fan and players would transfer and they had to sit out for a year, I never thought about it. But then when I got to college, it occurred to me, well, I could leave College of Charleston now and go to USC or Clemson, stay in state, or go to App State, which I almost went to, right? I don't have to sit out for a year as a student. Why do you have to, or go through really any punishment process or any sort of process where I have to take a back seat for some reason, or I'm penalized for just saying this isn't working out for me, I'm going to go somewhere else? I don't understand why you wouldn't have a system where the players are as empowered as the coaches or the administrators, because to your point, all those recruits at UCLA who came there to play for Neuheisel now have to deal with a guy they didn't want to come play for, right? So
Exactly.
If the coaches can leave, I don't understand why the players can't leave. So I agree with you. I think it's a positive change.
100%. 100%. And I think, especially when you're in it, but definitely from the outside looking in, I think everybody can see, that college football it's a money machine, and if you have like somebody like, Jamison Crowder or Daniel Jones on your team, you want to do everything you can to keep that source of revenue, that source of attention on your team. And the crazy part about it is like, those guys and the people who are bringing that revenue, selling tickets for the school, we really don't see any of that benefit. If what I'm saying makes sense, and it really is the institution, the athletic department, the coaching staff, who really reap the benefits of players who are playing at a high caliber and have, a large fan base, So I think definitely like the players are starting to realize that more, and universities are starting to realize that, in order for college football, the system of college football to continue to operate, they need to give players a little more autonomy in their future and in their decisions.
I think that's the right approach. I mean, you guys put in a ton of time. You literally leave parts of your body on the field. You take a beating, and you pay for it when you get older. There's no reason not to have a system whereby you guys are fully empowered and allowed to make decisions that you think are in your best interest, as long as you're not having situations like we've seen at Louisville with some of the players and all that. And I mean, the coaches, I misspoke when I said players. I think one of their basketball coaches just pled guilty or had just been charged with some crimes related to extortion. Obviously you don't want to see those things going on. But at the same time, if a player is sitting around saying, hey, coach, look, nothing against you, but this just isn't working out. This isn't a good enough system to showcase what I'm going to do. I thought it was going to work, but it's a bad decision. it turned out not to be the right decision for me, and I think a better decision would be that I leave. There's no reason that a player should have to risk sitting out for a year. I mean, you take Jeremy Cash and you think how helpful he might have been in 2012 if he hadn't had to sit out for a year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, of
And
course, I enjoyed all the
well,
time he played, but it would have been nice to see him in 2012.
yeah, exactly. And I think you say, the NCAA and the powers that be, they say that they have the player's best interest in mind, but at the end of the day, what interest did that serve? Hurting Jeremy Cash, making him sit out a year, or all the other players who that's happened to. Like, at the end of the day, who does that benefit? Why are we punishing players, as you said, for doing something that's in their best interest? I understand, different requirements, and like if you're saying that, okay, you want these kids to get their education, you want them to finish school, you don't want them to just bounce around, but there's guys who come to college for a specific purpose. They come to college to, that's a stepping stone to the NFL. Not everybody who comes to college is going there specifically to get the degree. I know a lot of guys come back who leave without degrees. Mostly at other schools. You don't really see this at Duke too much. I think the type of player that goes to Duke is someone who understands the value of having a degree. But, I mean, there's other schools where you have young men who are perfectly capable of leading a successful life without a degree, who come to college to have that stepping stone into the league. And if that's their career path, that's their goal, why is now the organization that was founded to protect these players standing in their way and being the biggest obstacle in their journey? I really didn't understand that. I'm glad that they're finally starting to come to their senses in regards to all that stuff.
Well, it's a power structural thing, right? I mean, you attended Duke. You're obviously, you're going through law school. I'm sure you've been exposed to a great amount of information in your time, and I'm sure one of the things that you've picked up is being exposed to all that with football and the recruitment process and the transfer process is, it's a lot of times it just comes down to control. And people who have control and have power over things don't like to give it up, right?
Exactly.
And if you're in a situation where you are, as the NCAA, being asked to cede control over something, the natural instinct's going to be, I don't want to do that. Same thing with the coaches, right? They're not going to want to give up any control or authority or spheres of influence. To go back to my history days, they're not going to want to give that stuff up. So it's just it's a process. And I agree with you. I mean, especially some schools are very serious about the academics. Some schools are not serious about the academics, right? It's not the same place to place. And if you're not serious about those types of things, then if the entirety of the NCAA is not serious about the academic portion of it, and they want to run the football program more like a business, then you can't get upset if a student athlete looks around and says, "Hey, I want to make a business decision here and leave."
Exactly, and I think that the NCAA maybe started to get their eyes open when you see things like to go to basketball, like how basketball players are doing it now. Like, some people are completely bypassing the whole NCAA power structure as it is, and they're losing out on that revenue. I'm sure the NCAA would have and UCLA would have loved the revenue they would have got from the Ball brothers, that media attention. But because the power structure of the NCAA has been so oppressive to athletes, they started to see that, okay, either we change and make this system more player friendly, or players are just going to find a way to bypass this system altogether, and then we never get that. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we could say it's about student athletes, it's about education, it's about money. And if you don't have that uh, um, you don't have LaMelo Ball playing at UCLA. You're not getting that revenue. He's not in the Sweet 16. He's not in the Final Four. That whole aura that their family brings, that they wanted to monetize the NCAA. They're like, we lost a lot of money, but we need to figure something out. So people with that caliber, people with that star power, don't sidestep the NCAA anymore. And I think that's really what, when you affect somebody's bottom line, it'll wake them up a little bit.
Well, and I think that the one and done rule is idiotic. As a fan, I hate it. I don't think it's necessarily good for the schools themselves because you're recruiting players who are going to be short term and the roster is going to turn over a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's hard to build consistency. I mean, you know this. You were there at the golden era of Duke football, right? You had consistency at every level, and that helped the program succeed. But it's also really unfair, I think, for the students to say, well, you have to go through college for 1 year. They don't want to be there. They'd rather be, in the G League or somewhere else. Let them go there. Empower them. I mean, I'm in a 4-person law firm, and we have 3 employees. And when I was at the larger firm I was at before I did this, and I would help train associates, I always wanted to empower them. I wanted to give them opportunities where they felt they could grow and, take them in, like we were talking about how important communication is earlier. Let them argue motions without me butting in and jumping all over them so that they can learn how to talk, how to communicate, how to, communicate to different types of audiences. Like a courtroom is different from a client, And when you're interviewing a witness, that's different from a judge and a jury. And let them learn all the different ways about how you have to talk in a way that empowers them, right? Not, oh, you're leaving, you're not part of the family, we don't want you here, get out, and doing that stuff. And I'm kind of ranting now a little bit because it's hard. Part of the reason I do this with Duke football is you guys are there for longer, and as a fan, I feel like I can invest in you more than I can in the basketball program because it's hard to keep up with all the folks coming in. And that's not a knock on those players. They're doing what's best for them. More power to them. But it's just as a fan experience, it's not great. And why don't we just let these kids, if they think they're good enough, let them go into the G League? Anyway, all right, let's turn on to maybe some more positive things. Because this is, part of why I like to do this is it gives me a chance to have interesting conversations that I don't always get to have, and this is definitely turned into a very interesting topic. But I want to catch up on a couple of points that I didn't get to cover with you. So, what was it like going from the West Coast to the East Coast?
It was definitely a big transition. Like I said, I'd grown up in Southern California. I was here my whole life. My whole family is here. And transitioning to Durham, North Carolina, it's definitely a beautiful part of the country. You have to get used to seeing all 4 seasons. Because in California, I mean, we have one season. It's the season it is now. It's literally sunny and cloud-free 90% of the year. But going to Durham that summer, I really I never really been through a thunderstorm. It's a perfect sunny day, and then you kind of could feel the humidity growing and the clouds forming, and out of nowhere you have a thunderstorm, and then it's just the most muggy. I can still smell the smell of that. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, but that smell after it's been hot all day, and then it rains, and then it kind of starts getting hot again. So just little things like that I had to adjust to. A lot of my teammates were from North Carolina, so heavy accent. I don't think us in California we have an accent. Maybe we do. Maybe we do, but the Southern accent was something I definitely had to get used to, and different terminology, things that people say. I just had to get used to it. But I would definitely say my roommate was from North Carolina, and everybody out there is very welcoming. The transition was made a lot easier because it felt like a family. Duke football is a family. although I didn't have my own family out there, whenever it'd be like we had time like away from football, people would be like, hey, come on with me. I know you can't make it back to California. Come out to Charlotte with me, or let's go to South Carolina or down to Georgia where my family's at, and spend some time with my family. So that definitely made the transition a little easier. But yeah, it's for sure a culture shock, I would say.
Well, when you moved back to California, you're playing at Sacramento State. How long did it take you to get settled, to fit in, and get used to a new team?
Part of the reason that I wanted to take them up on that opportunity is because it was a young team with potential, kind of like Duke was in the early days. I've heard some of the interviews you've done with those guys. So that kind of was instilled with me of being a leader. Coach Cutt always said, leave the place better than he found it. And I really thought that this was a good opportunity to do that, and a good opportunity to play good football at a high level. The coaches let me know that, they wanted somebody who could come in and be a leader, someone who has experience. I've played in the bowl games and been part of a largely successful football organization. So coming in, I was kind of like the big brother to a lot of people. I've seen a lot of things, and I don't know if it's well founded, but a lot of people like look up to FBS like it's like some shining beacon on a hill, which it is. We are playing football at a high level, but I think a lot of guys really respected me for the things that I did and the place that I was at. So a lot of people looked up to me, especially in that running back room. I look at it as more of an opportunity, like, yeah, I'm doing this for me. I want to see if I could play on Sundays, but also it was an opportunity for me to be a mentor to a lot of people who were, still playing now, And so I think that really made the transition easy. I didn't come in and, throw around my weight like, oh, look who I am, look at what I've done. I really just, hey, I'm going to work just like you have to work. I'm not going to just come in and be the starter. Like, although I knew that that's part of the reason that I went there, because that was promised to me, the way that I portrayed myself is as a worker, somebody who's going to come in and not be, just take what's given to them. So I think a lot of people can respect that work ethic, and so that made it easy for me to transition and build rapport with my teammates.
Well, how'd the season go for you? And before you answer that, I'm sorry your ears had to suffer through the prior interviews that I've done, but how did the 2017 season go for you?
It went well. It was the same kind of thing. We were an RPO style offense. My roommate was actually the quarterback. He broke a lot of records, but it's funny because the conversation we had prior about the business structure of college football and everything that followed me to Sacramento State. When I got there, the offensive coordinator who was there and recruited me was no longer there when I played. The guy who came from I think Louisiana Tech, and he brought that system of RPO, really quarterback centric offense, to Sacramento State. We did well. It was the best season. I can't remember our record off the top of my head, but it was the best season that Sacramento State had ever, I believe. We were a few games. The FCS structure is a little bit different, but we fell short like one game of the playoffs or something like that. It went to like a 4-way tie between us. I don't know if anybody's familiar with any of these schools I'm going to name, but us, Weber State, UC Davis, and Eastern Washington. It was a 4-way tie, and then they looked to strength of schedule, stuff like that, to pick who falls in the playoff. But anyways, it was the best season that Sac State has had, and I think since the football program's been around. And then for me personally, dealing with that RPO style offense, I was able to get a lot more touches. Put a lot of good things on film. I had a lot of good games. Did a lot of good things in the passing game as well. Showed my versatility. I didn't really play special teams there, but I felt like I had a good body of work, special teams wise, from Duke coming in. So that wasn't really a big area of emphasis for me. But yeah, with what I was given, I think I maximized my opportunities. And yeah, so it was definitely, I think it was a good move. I met a lot of good people who are friends for life now, and got to play in front of my parents were at every home game, at pretty much every away game. So it was nice to be able to have some people in the stands at every game, which wasn't really the case at Duke.
Well, what was the approach to the special teams like for Sac State compared to the Blue Devils?
I can't disparage Sac State and their preparation, but it was just different. You know, I feel like as a coach, you have to put different eggs in certain baskets, and at Sac State, you know, the emphasis wasn't so much on special teams. You know, special teams was kind of like cursory. It was something that not really an afterthought, but it just had to be good. It had to be good and good enough got it done for us at Sac State. And I think that's a decision that a coach has to make based on the strength of their roster and the strength of their opponents, like where they're going to put the emphasis. At Duke, playing people like Miami and Florida State, like those teams were always had different talent than we had and more depth in different positions. So offensively, like they could do things that maybe we couldn't do offensively. Defensively, they had some things that we couldn't do. But I felt like the place that schools like Miami didn't really take seriously was special teams. And so a school like Duke, who were a little bit more balanced across the board, we can't do some of the flashy things that they're doing at Miami just because we don't have the personnel for that. We'll make up for it in the kicking game. Whereas Sac State, our offense was stacked across every position. And so we could run up the score. So it was to other teams to kind of figure out how to match us in different areas. So I think that's what I've identified as the difference in schemes.
You mentioned Miami a bunch there, and we will get to that just so you can mentally prepare yourself. But since you said you listened to some of my prior interviews, you know that comes up a lot. But before we get to that, I'm curious, what was your experience as a student like in Durham, and then also in law school? What's been the biggest challenge for you in law school?
The experience academically at Duke, I think going in, the type of student that Duke recruits is someone who will be able to excel both on the football field and in the classroom. I think every Duke football player, Duke athlete finds their niche. They find, you know, the degree that they're going to pursue that really speaks to them. But I think it was early on for me. It was proving I had a lot that I wanted to prove to other people in the classroom, because this isn't with everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people go to Duke and they love athletes. They love student athletes, love having them in their classroom and stuff. But then there's some people who Duke is literally one of the hardest schools to get into in the country. And so then there's a lot of people who feel like you guys were just given a free pass because you can run a football or shoot a basketball. And I think a lot of people were missing the mark with that, because we're actually intelligent people, you know? We're actually people who will be able to hold our own on the athletic field, but we'll also be able to hold our own in the classroom. So a lot of it for me at the beginning was trying to prove to people like that where egos would clash in the classroom, and it would be a challenge of intelligence. You know, I want to show people like, dude, yeah, I'm waking up at 6 a.m., going to practice, and I'm in the same class that you are. I'm taking the same exam that you are. I'm doing just as well or better than you on those exams. So don't look down on me because I'm a student athlete. But that's just part of the experience. I can't speak poorly on the Duke student body at all, because largely everybody there is welcoming. Everybody loves to have student athletes in their class. Those same people who are in those classrooms are the people who are in the stands at our games and tuning in, following us around the country. So it was definitely a good experience, but I think you have to prove to some people, you have to earn your respect from some people. And luckily, I was I was able to do that.
Let me be really rude and interrupt you because I'm curious about
I,
this. When I was at W&L Law, I
yeah,
audited a couple of undergrad classes, and I quickly
yeah,
realized that if I had gone to W&L as straight from college or from high school and gone there for college, I would have flunked out in about 3 days.
yeah,
Just because I was not ready for that at that point, that level of academic intensity at that point in time. And you mentioned that you you mentioned that Duke is one of the hardest schools to get into in the country. I'm just curious, was there an adjustment to going from high school academic rigors to college academic rigors at one of the top academic institutions in the world? Was that noticed? I'm just curious, based on my own experience, what auditing those classes, if that occurred for you guys when you came in there.
this is where I'd have to give the academic support staff that like department provides us their flowers. You know, they they want to get us in there early. They give us an opportunity. That's why it's mandated for football and basketball. We have to be there all summer. But most athletes, they give the opportunity to come in that first summer prior to your first academic year to get a taste of things. You know, to really feel what it's like, what it's going to be like at Duke in kind of a safe environment where like that first summer you could take fun classes, things that aren't really so rigorous, but it kind of gives you, it opens your eyes to, hey, this isn't high school anymore, and you're gonna have to get it together. You know, not everybody, people aren't gonna be on you every day like, hey, where's this assignment? Like, why didn't you turn this in? Like, you're falling behind. So I think that's one thing that Duke does with their athletes that's pretty smart, giving them the opportunity to come on campus prior to the rest of the student body being there and taking some courses. But also, like, school's hard, you know, and it's hard for everybody. And Duke athletics does a good job of identifying problem areas for whoever it may be. If you're struggling, like for me, math has always been something that's difficult, and I think
That's why you're in law school.
Yes,
Same
exactly
way.
what I was about to say.
There are
Exactly.
no lawyers who are good at math.
That's exactly what it's funny because, you know, if you hate math, you go be a lawyer. But yeah, so like you have to take some math courses in whatever major you have. So I had to take statistics, and that was a problem area for me for sure. And the way that the support system is set up, which is maybe a little bit of an advantage being an athlete. I don't know if the students who weren't athletes had this ease of access to getting support, but I could just go talk to Heather Ryan, which was our athletic academic coordinator. I'll just talk to her like, hey, Heather, like, you know, I feel like statistics really kicking my butt. Like, can I get some help? And yeah, she would have a tutor. She'd be like, all right, I'll get you a tutor for statistics, somebody to work with you. And we'd meet them we had a whole athletic academic center, the K Center above the basketball practice facility. And we would just meet with the tutor. So I think there's definitely the tools to succeed for athletes, you know, and make the transition a little more palatable.
Well, that's interesting what you say, and I am legitimately curious at that because, and I'm glad to hear they have that for you because, like I said, I mean, I went to college at Charleston, and I'm not knocking that institution, but I thought I did well enough in high school, and I did well in college, but when I got to a more rigorous academic place, I just said, "There's no way I could have made it through here," you know, at that stage in my life, and it's good to hear that Duke is smart enough to realize that that is a big learning curve for, I'm sure, a lot of
Yeah,
people, and helps you out with it. Because
yeah.
I can't imagine the pressures that you guys are under to play big time D1 football, but yet also perform in the classroom. I mean, that can't be easy for you. I mean, what was your average schedule like as far as Monday through Sunday?
So we had a little bit of a different schedule in season versus out of season. In season, Mondays we had off, so that would assume that we played a football game on Saturday, if it's an away game, say, let's just give an example of a week. Like, say we're playing, we've been talking about Miami, let's talk about Miami. Say we're playing Miami. So that Friday, we're leaving Durham, RDU. We're taking off around maybe like noon, between noon and 1. We'll land in Miami around, these are rough numbers, maybe like 2 or 3. And then we're going straight from the airport onto the bus to the hotel. We get to the hotel. We have maybe an hour or two to just kind of hang out, relax a little bit before we have dinner, which is scheduled from like 5. I think they would block it out from like 5 to like 6:30. And then at 6:30, we have our first meeting. It'll be like a team meeting, or it'll probably be a special teams meeting. Our first meeting will be 6:30, special teams. Everybody's in there, and then you break up after like 7, and then you go offense, defense, have your unit meetings, and then talk about the game plan, go over practice that we had Friday before we left Durham. So we'll watch the film in the hotel, make any last minute adjustments we need to make. And then we have a team meeting, and then we'll probably be done with meetings around 9. If our family's there, we could see them in the lobby or whatever, and then you have to be in your room by 10 p.m. Get in your room, 10 p.m., lights off is probably 11. Wake up call, say the kickoff the next day is at 6 p.m. Wake up call would probably be 9 a.m., 9 or 10. Have breakfast, have more meetings after breakfast. Meetings probably go until 1. And then you have from like 1 to like 3 to do whatever you want. Go to your room. Some guys would take naps. Some guys would go through the trainers, whatever it is. We go to the stadium, get to the stadium probably like 3 hours before kickoff. Do what you do, play the game. And as soon as the game is over, like you hit the shower. Guys who are talking to media, talk to the media. Guys who need treatment. We're back on the bus straight to the airport. We fly back from Miami to Durham Saturday, and then Sunday is another big day for us. So we would have some guys go to church and stuff in the morning. So we pretty much have the morning off. You have injury check-in around noon. So guys who were injured or saw the trainer the day before, or just played for that matter, have to come in, talk to Hat Salzor, who was our trainer. You would talk to him, make sure everything's good to go. And then we'd have lunch. And then we'd have meetings that probably started around like 3 or 4 on Sunday. Then we're in meetings going over film. So we start with the team meeting, talk about the game in general takeaways from the game. That'll go into a special teams meeting. We break down the special teams film for the game. Just kind of briefly talk about our plan for the next week. Go over our next opponent after we got away I got away from the game that we just played. And then we break up into position meetings, have our position meetings. And then we'd have practice at 6 p.m. On Sunday. And that was a real light practice, get out the lactic acid, go over our game plan for the next week. So really after that last position meeting that you have on Sunday, you put away Saturday's game and you're on to the next opponent. So Sunday's practice is all geared towards the next opponent. We would be done with practice maybe around 8, have dinner, and then we'd be done for their Sunday. Monday we'd have off. That's a big recovery day. A lot of guys would come in, watch film or do whatever they have to do just to get ready for the week, get situated, catch up on some schoolwork, whatever. Tuesday morning, we would call it Bloody Tuesday. That's like full pads, our real like tune up for the game, get ready for our next opponent. On Tuesdays, I was probably waking up at 6:15 and try to get to the the football building by like 6:30. Get taped. You get your ankles taped. Get any other things you need to get addressed by the trainers. Get dressed. Go to meetings, and then meetings would run maybe till like 8:15, and then we're on the practice field from like 8:30 to 10:30. We break, go down, shower, and guys had class starting at like noon. or some people had 11:30 class, so they had to hustle. But yeah, so that pretty much repeats itself on Wednesday, and then Thursday was our walkthrough day, so it's a little later wake up. Friday morning we had a practice before we would go off to our next opponent. So yeah, that's what a typical week would look like.
And how do you find time to get the academic side of things done? Because it doesn't sound like you guys have a lot of free time.
You know, you really just gotta learn time management fast. You learn how to prioritize things, figure out what needs to be attended to at certain times. And I mean, it's really just about having a balance, you know. I would say your commitment to football it takes up a large amount of your day, as you can see. But I mean, you would still have to find time to those little windows that you would have 2-3 hours here and there in the day. You just have to try to get your work done, you know. And it's really incumbent on you to figure out how you're going to get it done. But it's definitely challenging.
Well, the time management and the time control will help you in your career as an attorney. The sooner you can learn to block off that calendar and do block scheduling, I think the happier and more productive you're going to be. With adjusting to law school, you know, for me, there was a learning curve getting in there because I didn't have anybody in my family who was a lawyer. We didn't have any, you know, I was in classes with a lot of people who were third or fourth generation attorneys or their parents were lawyers, and I was kind of like, oh, wow, okay, this is different. What was the biggest challenge for you, or what's been the biggest challenge for you so far in law school?
I think it's just, especially that first year, it's just a different way of studying, you know? It's a different way of digesting material. They throw a lot at you, and you have to learn how to absorb that material. And essentially part of it is learning how to condense a large amount of material for the entire semester and then regurgitate it onto an exam. But I think I don't know how your law school worked or how other law schools work around the country, but where I'm at, and it seems like a good amount of schools do this as well, it's like one grade, you know? We're graded on the final.
Yep.
So whereas in undergrad, you know, you get a participation grade, you get a grade for homework assignments, you get a grade for your performance on like a midterm, a performance on a final exam, quizzes and stuff like that. Law school is really one time to showcase everything that you know. And if it's a bad morning, if it's you're just off that day, that's what's going to reflect on your transcript. And I think I really go into it with an athlete's mindset, like, all right, man, it's time to perform, you know? And I think that would probably be the biggest adjustment, the way that law school is structured and the grade. Everything at my law school is graded on a curve, so that's weird. That's weird as well for me. You know, it's like after you put something on tape, you're not really necessarily being graded on your work product, but it's kind of like, yeah, it's hard to explain, but it's like no matter how good you think you did, somebody could have done better, and it's not like the A is just going to be the A. It could be all over the place. So it's kind of hard. That's a little mental struggle to know where you fall on that curve. Luckily, I've been able to hold my own, and I'm doing well in law school, doing pretty good. So I think I've been able to adjust. But yeah, it's just those little law school specific things that you have to adjust to.
Well, it's funny what you say about the grading and the curve. I know that the first year curve was real strict at W&L, and it got looser after into year two. But it's funny what you say about how sometimes you just have an off moment when you're taking one of those exams, and they structure the exams like they would, you know, this is your trial, right? You get one shot, hopefully. God, they never get better if you have to try them twice. But you get one shot to try it, or you get one shot for your oral argument on the case. But I remember I was taking an exam from one of my favorite professors. He and I became good friends, and he and his wife are actually my daughter's godparents. and
Oh wow.
I got to one question on the exam, and I said, I don't get this question. I'm confused. So I went to another question, answered that, came back, said, I can't quite figure this one out. So I finished the rest of the exam back, came back to that last question, and I must have read it 3 or 4 times. I said, I have no clue what in the
Yeah.
hell he is asking. So I sat there, and I remember writing this out, and I said, this is what I did. I was handwriting it. I said, I am going to apologize in advance for the lack of clarity in this answer. I have read this question multiple times and do not understand what you were asking me. I think you are asking about this. And then I went through all these other scenarios of if you were asking this and if you were asking that. I think I did well in that class, but anyway.
That's funny. That's funny.
I'll tell you, sometimes in the legal career, there's this kind of never admit you made a mistake thing that crops
Yeah.
up. That's wrong. Just own it. If you
Yeah.
don't know or you mess something up, just acknowledge it, and it's so much
For
better.
sure.
You know.
For sure.
And again, that goes back, and this is the third time I've saying about it, but I'm talking to you about this because you're going to be a lawyer, and words are our tool of the trade, right? So
Yeah.
if you're an honest broker and an honest communicator and you tell people in a clear way that, hey, I'm owning this was on me, they'll respect you for it, right? So,
For sure.
but speaking of things that sometimes maybe didn't go the way that you'd planned or hoped, since you mentioned Miami a couple of times, let's go back to Halloween 2015. As I was drinking a Modelo with my buddy Tim, who was also drinking. We were drinking Modelo that night. We don't drink Modelo at Duke games anymore for that reason. Thomas Sirk.
Bad taste.
Yeah.
Bad taste.
Oh God. Well, we're the drinking team coordinators, right? We let you down. Okay. We picked the wrong beer. I will take responsibility, and Tim will take responsibility as well.
Okay.
All right, there we are. We lost you for a second. All right, the drinking team coordinators. I think we're at D team coordinators on Twitter. We will take ownership for the loss. Okay, we'll own it. Okay, it's on us. Cirque scores the touchdown. We sure feel like you guys are going to win. You probably feel like you're going to win. I think that was the last squib kick under a Coach Cutcliffe team ever. You're on the field for the return. What did the coaches tell you going into that kickoff?
So basically, when we're on that launch pad that I described earlier, getting ready to go out on the field, we're hyped. This is the first time, we're gonna stick it to Miami at home in a little bit, I believe, in a few years for sure. But so the game pretty much is in the bag, and all we have to do, we're not going to kick the ball downfield, give them an opportunity for a return, just squib kick down the middle, cover down the field, and that's a ball game. Defense is going to come out there and close it out. There's no time left. So anyways, we get out on the field, we have our plan, we go out on the field, we kick the ball, go downfield. I mean, we're pretty jazzed, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's a regular squib kick. We knew that they might try something fancy. So we're covering down the field, and here we go. Here the circuits go. We see them pick it up and throw it back across the field. And at this point, we're just kind of shadowing them, making sure that nobody gets past us. But all right, whatever. Time's expired. These dudes are just going to throw the ball back and forth across the field, and, nothing's going to happen. And then what starts happening, and if you watch that tape, you'll see, somebody caught the ball and, they were on their knee.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, that's it. That's the game's over. You play to the whistle, but, I mean, that's coach speak, we're playing to the whistle, but you see somebody's knee down and you're like, okay, that's game, but then the refs let it go.
Let me
go ahead.
Let me interrupt you here, because I watched this again this morning to get ready for us. It looked like you took a big hit right around the time of that lateral. Because I saw you running again after it, and it seemed like you had a little bit of a hitch with movement. So I want you to talk about that, but also tell us, so after the lateral happens, you guys are kind of like, wait, where's the whistle?
Yeah, exactly. So, I get the big hit, and it's kind of like, like you get back up, and you're like, all right, what's going on? You get your bearings back about you, and the play's still going on. I think everybody can appreciate that football is a pretty quick game. Like, plays happen quickly, plays develop quickly, especially like, a squib kick down the middle. It's not going to take that long of a play. So when the play's still going on, and I think you could kind of see in some of the players' demeanor and stuff like that too. Like, we're not used to being on the field for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Like, a play doesn't really last this long. So a lot of guys were winded, and you start seeing the laterals go back and forth, and it's like, is this actually happening? Like, we're literally trying to cover somebody and then throw the ball back across the field, and like, I think you kind of hit this moment in your head, like, what's going on right now? Like, this has to stop. Like,
So
at some go ahead.
no, because you guys had really good, it looked like gap control, and then they got a wedge set up on the far side of the field where you were trying to get to,
Yeah.
and they broke it. And I thought the discipline that you guys had was really good as far as staying where you needed to be. But what point in time do you guys start to go, oh no, this could be a problem?
I think when they swung the ball, so the ball went left, our left. It went all the way left, and like you said, we kept pretty good gap control. And then when the ball starts coming back towards, so as we're looking at it, I'm looking at it as we're looking at it, the ball starts coming back towards the middle of the field, then to the right side of the field. It's like, all right, what's going on? Like, we got to get this covered. And it's like, at that point, like, you stop looking to people in their gaps. Like, that's when I feel like we started to lose gap control, when things started to get a little more like, okay, like, what's going on? So people are going out of their gaps, they're losing their gap, they're losing their area of the field because they're trying to put an end to it. It got to the point where it's like, all right, you can't look to somebody else to finish this. You got to make this tackle because the refs aren't going to do it. It felt like your teammate wasn't going to get it done. So it's like everybody's trying to make that play. And this is when you're seeing like Alonzo Saxton, like getting a block in the back, like everybody, like just things are happening on the football field.
One of many missed calls. Yeah.
And so it was like, whoa, this might actually be a problem. And, guys it looks like they're throwing forward laterals and stuff like that. And then when they start making it down the sideline, and you see people running on the field next to you, and like people are still getting pushed in the back, it's like you're trying to stop the play, you're trying to catch up to them. But I think a lot of us, like, if you talk to a lot of the guys who are on the field, they're like, there's no chance that this play's still going on. Like, a lot of the times you'll see, like, I don't know, like, when somebody, like, oh, it's a fumble, they pick it up, they run to the end zone, and, like, nobody really chases them. It's like, all right, you're stupid, you're wasting your energy. Like, it's clearly not a fumble. I think that might have been in a lot of the guys' minds, like, all right, whatever, like, this isn't a touchdown, it doesn't count, there's flags all over the field. But that deliberation after the play, when we were like, wait, are they seriously considering counting this? And, like, you could just feel, like, the tide shift in the stadium, because we were on such a high that we won this game, and, we were maybe celebrating prematurely, but I don't really think it was premature, because we did win that game, and a lot of illegal stuff happened. So I don't really know if it was premature, but you could just feel the air slowly get let out of the stadium, as the referees, it felt like they were deliberating for hours, like, and we're like, is this seriously like a question right now? And then we're watching the replay on the jumbotron. Sorry, there's a fire truck in the background, but we were watching the replay on the jumbotron, and guys are talking like, dude, they might actually give him that touchdown. And they come back, they give their call, and Miami is just over there acting crazy. And I just remember, like, I could still vividly, like, see the celebration that they're having on their sideline, and I think that took a lot out of our season. It took a lot of the wind out of our sails, because it was like we fought the good fight. We did everything we were coached to do, and we had it stolen from us. So I think it kind of set our season on a poor trajectory after that.
Well, I was going to ask you about the aftermath, but I think you covered that. And then I was also going to ask you what you thought about the call that was ultimately made. And it sounds like you thought it was absurd for them to come out from the hood 3 times and take as long as they take, and then not call the guy down in the game over and give you the win. Did I sum that up correctly?
Exactly.
I mean, what?
I mean, even to this day, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And a lot of like my friends from out here will send me the clip, like ESPN will post it on Instagram, like craziest plays in the decade and stuff like that. And it just, I don't know. I don't know how those referees, I mean, they're all humans. I don't know how or if they ever coached or repped another football game again, but it was trash.
Well, to your point about everybody being human and everybody being capable of making mistakes, and in fact making mistakes, that's what happens. But that's what we have replay for, right?
Exactly.
So I don't get that. One correction from me. The other Twitter account is at Duke Coordinator, and Duke Athletics. If you're listening, we can talk remuneration for you to purchase that from me one day. We can work something out. But you mentioned how the season went into a downward trajectory. We all remember that. I've talked about that with a lot of players. I don't think we necessarily need to recover it here, cover it again here. But what I do want to go into, though, briefly with you, or take as much time as you want. I don't want to impose on you too much. You've been very generous with your time, and I've enjoyed this conversation. But you guys bounce back. You beat Wake. You end with a victory in the Pinstripe Bowl. And 2016 looks very promising. You've got depth at a lot of key positions. You've still got some good players, even though some folks have left over the years to either go pro or just graduate. And then all the injuries happen. And we could recount every single one of them, but I don't think we have enough time to do that, because it just seemed like every time you turned around, someone else was getting hurt. What was that season like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the injuries were definitely a big part of the season. And it was just like, we put a lot into it coming off the year that we had. And when we go into it and we see that things aren't really like working out the way that we envisioned it, you know, you have to find week in, week out. I think it was tough for us to find a way to break the cycle that we were in. You know, it's just being part of a losing season. It feels like it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, like you try to take each week as an individual game week and as a season in its own right. But I think that when you're on that cycle and the injuries that we've had at key positions, you know, it's hard to. I think team morale definitely suffers, and once you lose one or two games, 3 in a row, it's like you start to see your chances of making a bowl game dwindle. And then I think everybody, like, I mean, we're young athletes, so you have to remind yourself what you're truly playing for, and your goal and your outcome for the season kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I think that year was definitely a tough year from the outset, injury wise, and I think that's part of what contributed to what ultimately ended up happening.
Yeah, you guys lost Cirque. He got hurt, and then you lost your punter at one point. I think it was Anthony Nash got hurt, and it seemed like everybody on the wide receiving core got hurt. You mentioned Jaleh Duncan earlier. I think there were a couple of D linemen, maybe an O lineman or two. It's hard to remember all of it because it just felt like everybody got hurt. But
Devon, I believe.
Yeah, I couldn't remember which season it was. Thank you for reminding. Yeah, that had to be difficult because you can't replace a guy like him.
Yeah, and I mean that was early on in the season. I think we were that was Notre Dame. I was his off returner, so basically like his bodyguard on a lot of those punt returns, kickoff returns. And when you see somebody like that who has such a, I mean, at the end of the day, like football, like we talk a lot about football and stuff like that, but these are our guys. Like we're brothers. This is a brotherhood. And you see somebody who has like such a promising future and made a real impact on our team go down like that, it takes a lot out of you. And we were able to rally at Notre Dame. It was one of the funnest games I've been a part of. But I think when the dust settles and you're like trying to pick up the pieces, it's difficult. It's really difficult to come off of that. And I think it showed throughout our season that it was kind of tough to come back from a lot of those key injuries.
Right, and about Edwards, I don't want to say anything that could be construed as negative about any of the other players on your team, but Edwards had a unique ability whenever he was near the ball or had the ball in his hands to make a game-changing play.
Yeah.
And that's impossible almost to replace. And I just, when he got hurt, I remember watching that Notre Dame game. I just said to myself, one, I hope he's okay. And then two, I said, this could be a real long season, even much longer than I thought. And, it kept going that way. And, that old adage, teams that are losing find ways to lose games. It just seemed like 2016 was nothing that you guys were doing really wrong. It's just, you couldn't stay healthy. And I'm sure that had to be frustrating because you don't feel like you're in control of that.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, week in, week out, when your schedule isn't necessarily getting any easier. I mean, we respect every team. We would respect every team, but it's just like you got to find a way to win. You have to find a way to win, and when you can't seem to pull out, especially like close games that you're losing, and I feel like a lot of the games, a lot of the results of the game doesn't really reflect how the game went. I don't think we're necessarily getting beat up too badly. I mean, a lot of the scores don't look very, very good, but I think like when you lose a close game or a game that you feel like is in your control, just balloons out of control, it really takes a toll on a team, for sure.
Well, let's end on a positive note. You mentioned Notre Dame, but when you look back on your time at Duke, your time playing football, what's your favorite moment from that period?
I think I'll just have to say the lifelong relationships that I've made. We've talked about positives, we talked about negatives, but the thing that you really got to identify is that you went through those positives and those negatives with a group of guys that you grew with. We took our lumps together. We all, like, especially the class that I came in with, but the team in general, we faced a lot of the same things. We dealt with a lot of the same issues, but through all that, we became stronger. We grew closer together, and these are, even if it's a locker room of 80 to 100 guys, like, those are guys that you could come to and they're going to have your back. And even still today, like, we help each other out. We look out for each other. And I think it's just the brotherhood, the camaraderie, that really that changed my life in the moment, and it changed my life going forward, and I'm better for it. So it was really a blessing. And every time I look back on it, like, maybe my career didn't go the way that I envisioned. Clearly I'm about to start studying for the bar. I'm not playing on Sundays, and I think that was the goal at the outset, but I realized a lot of things. I learned a lot, grew a lot, and I'm definitely better for it. And have to realize that this opportunity was a blessing. Not many people get to play as long as I played, and I'm thankful every day for the opportunity.
Well, and to your point about getting ready for the bar exam, the law, I think, is a noble profession. I know a lot of times lawyers don't have the best reputation, but we are asked to help people through some of their most serious times. We're allowed to and be fortunate enough to help them plan and structure their businesses. And you, if you, for example, stay on the prosecution side of things, you'll be doing a valuable public service and a public good. And you will be helping victims get what happened to them redressed and dealt with. And look, one of my partners does a lot of criminal defense work, so I shouldn't go around praising prosecutors necessarily. No, but you know, regardless of what you do as an attorney, it's a noble profession and it means a lot. And you have an opportunity to have a wonderful, wonderful career. And I know it's going to work out great for you. Obviously, going to Duke and playing at the high level that you played at, but also performing at the high level in the classroom that you performed at, that's going to help you. All the tricks and tools that you've learned through that will help you as an attorney and help you develop. And as an attorney who's been practicing since 2008, I can tell you that bar exam prep will scar you mentally. So the bar exam will scar you mentally as well, but it's a process and you got to get through it, right? So but if there's anything that I can do to help you out in any way in the future, you've been very generous with your time today. You've got my number, you've got my contact information. Just reach out. I'm more than happy to help you out with anything that I can.
Cool, I appreciate it.
Well, Joe, thanks a lot for coming on today. This was a great talk. We covered some very interesting topics, and it was great to hear about what you're doing now and what you plan to do in the future. For those of you out there who know Joe, who played with Joe, who maybe coached Joe and are associated or were associated sometime with Blue Devils football, hey, reach out. My direct messages are open at Duke Coordinator or at Duke FB Coverage. Go to bullcitycoordinators.com. Send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. You can find us. We are happy to set up interviews and talk with you guys whenever and however it's convenient. We've got a few more planned for this season. We've got a good one coming up in June. We got 2 exciting ones in July, and then I've got one in August that's probably going to be the last one for the off season until we get into football coverage, and then I'm going to try to pick it up again in either December or January. Hopefully in January, because the Blue Devils will have a great season this year, and we'll get to watch them for a long time. So if you want to reach out, you know how to find us. We look forward to doing many more of these in the future, and we appreciate your continued patronage of the site.